Welcome to the Shooting Show. This week we're goose shooting both sides of the border in all conditions, plus Byron tests the latest factory rifle in the world.
Back at the start of the year, Byron was hot on the heels of goose flights around the country. He started his quest following a group of guns in his home county.
If we don't shoot now, we're going to blame you.
In the darkness, the team assemble in a deserted farmyard, knowing only that they're about to be guided to a ditch somewhere nearby. There are plenty of geese in the area, and the harvested potato field they will overlook should prove fruitful. First though, they have to traipse across muddy fields to start setting up their hides.
Sit here facing that way, and one there. We sit. That's out here, and then we've got the hide here, the back who's gone over. Well, put the back into it, boy.
They have arrived in plenty of time with dawn a good while off. This gives everyone the chance to get their nets up and dig out a stable shooting platform in the ditch.
Really, if you can get a ditch or a wall or a hedge or something to get hidden in, and try and use as much natural cover as you can. Rather than putting up a lot of hides. You don't want something that's got to stick like a box out, you know, so you stick out like a sore thumb. You want to have something that you can, when you're looking at it, you disappear.
Put some grass on it, right?
The hide covered, they begin setting up the decoys.
November's been tricky. They're not the easiest in November, the geese. They're sort of in between stubble and taters.
They position them in front and behind and settle into the hides to wait for the fast approaching sunrise. As the light grows in the eastern sky, the geese lift and begin to fly inland. Unfortunately, not to the decoys yet, but the numbers of geese is immediately evident. They are here in their thousands. The shooters wait and wait some more, all the while being taunted by distant skeins flying to other feeding areas. When eventually a skein comes in, they are all but keen to commit completely. Out of camera shot, a single goose does fall, but that won't feed many people. With the mild weather this winter, the geese have been wary and often hung back just beyond sensible shooting ranges. To get into the best goose shooting, hard weather is really what you want. Compared with the bag from the day before, it has been a less than successful morning. But all is not lost, as now Byron heads south and crosses the border to join David Virtue in England. It's a misty morning as the group of guns set off under the guidance of DV. It's not ideal, but he knows the geese are here. They will have to play it as it happens and hope the birds fly low enough to spot the decoys.
Anything that's not non-plastic, we tend to use foam decoys. I've used some of Chris Green's this year. I've used like the Texas rags, and you know, we used them yesterday for the first time, and they were quite successful just in that slight breeze. I mean, I tend to, for shooting grey lags, not so many decoys, spaced out into sort of family groups. If you're shooting pink feet, possibly bigger numbers of decoys you're using. If you can produce a little bit movement there in the decoys, it'll help you.
The said decoys are laid out and everyone mans their ambush position. With the heavy mist, the birds lift late. Through the fog, they can be heard loud and clear before the group eventually gets a visual. It doesn't take long for the first skein to come in and a barrage of shots drop a handful of geese. After picking one lying awkwardly out of the fallen so it doesn't put the others off, the guns wait for some more action.
It's thick fog that you're wanting to try and get them through that fog to come and have a look at your decoys or whatever. And if it's quiet, it's silent, you know, it's very random if they're going to come over you if you're quiet. But if you can call and just attract them a little bit closer, if they're maybe half a mile away and you can get them to come through that fog and see the decoys, you'll get them to come in.
Another skein closes the distance and a fusillade of shots rings across the field. The geese fall like rain. Despite the early success, the geese are not too keen to flight in the mist. Some of the guns move to a distant field to hopefully help them along, leaving their teammates somewhat optimistic that more movement will ensue. With limited success, the hunters return and the morning's activities draw to a close.
A lot of my time is spent out scouting for geese. 90% of your time, I would say, is out looking for geese. 10% of your time is actually shooting in the morning. Preparation before you go out to shoot is your main thing. This morning we decided it was a sort of new area, a new bit of ground, would go and have a go. The fog was a bit against us this morning, but we still got a few at the end of the day. It's mild conditions and the geese aren't that hungry. They're not that hungry. They can pick and choose for the feed. So they're taking their time, and on a still day like today, it's still, they don't need to hurry up and come in there. They're not hungry. The geese shot have been very, very fat. If they're not committed to come in, they're not going to, they're not going to commit suicide.
That's a few more geese in the bag for David and his team. And now, the Shooting Show news.
This is the Shooting Show news. After taking a few months out to recharge his batteries after his Olympic gold, Peter Wilson has confirmed he has his sights on Rio 2016. The 26-year-old Dorset shooter said he was now determined to fight for the top accolade in Brazil after his life-changing double trap win in London. The ISSF implemented a new set of rules for double trap in January, and Wilson said the change came at an exciting time in his competitive career. More in the next issue of Clay Shooting. All dogs in England must be microchipped by the 6th of April 2016, the government has announced. Owners who breach the law face a fine of up to £500. 100,000 dogs are abandoned or lost every year, costing taxpayers and animal welfare charities £57 million. The government is also closing a legal loophole whereby owners whose dogs attack people on private property cannot be prosecuted. The RSPCA is under pressure again following yet another high-profile prosecution. The charity brought proceedings against farmer Keith Watson for allegedly interfering with a badger set. But the trial collapsed on the first day after the RSPCA admitted there was no prospect of conviction. The Countryside Alliance's Tim Bonner described the RSPCA's anti-hunt campaigning as disgraceful. An MP has tabled a motion to end banks' discrimination against law-abiding shooters. Gun dealers have had their legitimate businesses turned away by banks, who have described them as not moral. Now, Jim Shannon MP has put forward an early day motion in Parliament calling for banks to end their unjustified treatment of shooters. And finally, an area of RSPB moorland in the Peak District has been left damaged by contractors, leading to claims of poor management. Big Moor, a site of special scientific interest, is managed jointly by the RSPB and the National Trust. A contractor used a tracked dumper truck on the land to gather brash, causing extensive damage, particularly to the lower level of peat, which can take 1,000 years to develop. That was the Shooting Show news.
This week we're going to be having a look at another American manufacturer. We're doing it from the back of my Land Rover, unlike actually on the range like we normally do, because if you have a look outside, it's snowing and there are blizzards coming in every 10-15 minutes, so I'm just trying to get a little bit of shelter in between taking some shots. Anyway, I'm talking about Kimber. Now, Kimber until a couple of years ago were a relatively unknown quantity until they started being distributed by Riflecraft. Unlike a lot of the other reviews that I've done for the Shooting Show, this isn't the first time that I've fired a Kimber. In fact, this is the 4th rifle I've had, testing it in various different guises for sporting rifle. So I'm in a position to tell you already that there are a lot of great aspects of this rifle, and I'm going to show you these as we go through this review. Now, this particular model is the Kimber Montana 84M. This one's in 243. But it's not just the lightest rifle that Kimber make. This is also the lightest production rifle in the world. At 5 pounds 6 ounces, it really does feel like a feather in the hand. Now, the action that Kimber use is a combination of the Mauser 98 and the Winchester Model 70. But what they've done is they've stripped it down and they've stripped it back to the very minimum tolerances possible for each caliber bracket. And what that leaves is a very, very lightweight yet strong action, and not to mention reliable. So we take a closer look at the Kimber bolt. You can see the fixed claw extractor. The ejector is a fixed blade which is inside the action, and if you look on the face you can see the slot where it comes through. Now, unlike a Mauser 98 where the slot for the ejector blade comes actually through the lug itself, this comes through the face of the bolt, and that is the same design that was used in the Winchester Model 70 and is actually stronger than the 98 design. If we flip the bolt round and have a look at the rear, you'll see that this is where the safety is attached. Now, it's a wing safety, the same as a Model 70, except this is 3-position. Fully rearward is safe, the rifle won't fire, the bolt is locked down. Central position, rifle still won't fire, but you can take the bolt out. And of course, fully forward, and I know that the chamber's empty, the rifle will go off. Now, this stock is not just a standard composite stock. It is Kevlar infused, which allows Kimber to make a stock that is both incredibly light and incredibly strong. Now, when I say strong, I'm not referring to what I'm normally referring about, which is it is a nice rigid stock where the forend doesn't flex. I mean incredibly strong. If you want to have a look on YouTube at Kimber stock destruction, you will see 2 guys putting a Kimber rifle through hell, blasting it with SSG from a shotgun and doing all manner of things to it to try and break it. And the Kimber stock holds up without even a crack. And that is to do with the Kevlar that is built into the composite. You may think that for such a light rifle, it could be quite abusive to fire, especially in a bigger caliber like a 308. Now, I have actually fired the Kimber Montano in a 308, and I can tell you that it is actually nicer to fire than the wooden stock version. Now, it took me a little while to try and work out why that could possibly be, and the only conclusion I could come to was that it was the Kevlar weave inside the stock actually absorbing some of the recoil that would otherwise be felt and transferred to you through a standard wooden stock. This is definitely one of the most pleasurable rifles that I've fired in a very, very long time, and when I first had a Montana on test, I went through boxes and boxes around just because I was enjoying shooting it so much. Anyway, I digress a little, but let's get this apart so I can show you what is possibly the cleverest part of this rifle. Okay, so that's the action screws out. If I just squeeze here, the stock comes apart. Now, if you have a look inside the stock, you can see that it's very cleanly moulded indeed. There's no overspill like you see in some synthetic stocks. But what is more interesting than that is the fact that there doesn't appear to be any bedding in here. Now, the classic models, which are wooden stocked, you can clearly see where the aluminium pillars are, and also where the resin bedding is around the rear action screw and also around the recoil lug area. You can't see this in the Kimber Montana, but it is in fact there. Now, what Kimber have very cleverly done is when they mould this stock, they mould it round an exact replica of the action of the rifle that's going to be bedded inside. So that means that from this point here all the way to about an inch, inch and a half past where the barrel starts is completely bedded and touching every surface of the metalwork. And they do that without having to add any extra resin. And of course, that not only makes it stronger, it is also a weight-saving exercise. Now, pillars. You can't see any pillars in this, but they are there. In fact, if you turn the rifle round, you can see the bottom of the pillars in the stock. Now, these pillars are built into the process when the stock is manufactured in the first place. Very clever, and just that little touch from Kimber that lets you know that this is a very, very well thought out rifle. Now, the last thing with the stock is that you will notice there is no magazine here. In fact, there's not even a floor plate. This is a blind magazine. You load each round from the top, and to eject the rounds you have to semi-chamber them and eject them into your hand. Finally, let's look at the trigger guard. Now, I have to applaud Kimber for this. A lot of manufacturers who go down the process of cutting weight off their designs would look at a trigger guard and say, let's make it synthetic. Kimber haven't done that. What they've done is they've made it stainless steel, the same as the rest of the rifle, and this is the right decision to make. So great job by Kimber on that. Now let's just put the stock to one side and get the metal work back out. The final thing to talk about before we put the rifle back together and let you see how it shoots is the trigger unit. American manufacturers are not renowned for producing excellent triggers. In fact, they're renowned for producing some pretty rubbish triggers. They have always historically tended to be very heavy, and that's due to legislation in America, and because of that, quite creepy and uneven breaks. I've fired a lot of different Kimbers, and that has not been the case with any of them. In fact, I'd go as far to say is the trigger unit on the Kimber is excellent. It's fully adjustable, and you can see the adjustment screws here. But when the rifles come from Riflecraft, certainly judging by the rifles that I've had on test, you probably won't have to adjust them anyway. Certainly I've been happy enough to use them as they've come. Finally on the trigger, if you have a close look at the trigger blade, you'll see that it's really quite fat and wide. It's probably actually the widest trigger blade of any rifle that I've tested, and might not be to some people's taste, but I really do like the nice wide trigger blade on my finger. It's really comfortable and easy to grip, and just sits nicely when my hand curves over the pistol grip. Well, I think that pretty much covers everything. I think the only thing that's really left to do now is put the rifle together and then talk about how it shoots. Well, we've had to cut the range shooting a little bit short today. There's been blizzards coming over the hills this whole day, and we've had to shoot in the gaps between the whiteouts. But fortunately, I've shot a lot of Kimbers before, so I know how well they shoot, and the bottom line is they're excellent. And this rifle is actually my own. I've decided after shooting them for 2 years that I had to add one to my armoury. And this 243 is also a 1/2 inch shooter. Today the conditions were difficult and I was trying 105 grain geckos, which are just a little bit heavy for this rifle. But even still, in these terrible conditions, I was still able to return decent groups. This one needs a few clicks down. So the bottom line with Kimber is that they have done a brilliant job in modernising an action that was world renowned and respected. They've brought it into the 21st century and they've made a rifle that everybody can enjoy at an affordable level. I really rate them, I enjoy using them, and I'm looking forward to hunting over the next few years with my new purchase.
That's it for this week. Thanks for watching. We're out every Monday, 7:30 PM UK time. This is The Shooting Show.